Everything Meghan and Harry do turns into a circus.
I apologise for thinking it was a faux royal trip. It's not, it's a business trip.
This is a trash for cash tour.
The Queen said you can't do both jobs. You can't monetise the royal family.
The plates are smashing at Buckingham Palace over this sort of gig economy royal status that they're trying to fashion out for themselves.
Why do they both appear to just rub people up the wrong way?
There are a lot of people who hate and despise them in Australia.
Welcome to Royal Exclusive, where the Sussexes are going global, the King is going diplomatic, and the royal drama never takes a day off. Prince Harry and Meghan are down under on what they insist is a private trip, complete with pricey events, no public walkabouts, and growing questions over who is paying. Meanwhile, Harry is being sued by his own charity, and Meghan is running back to Netflix. Plus, with Donald Trump clashing with the Pope ahead of the King's state visit, could Charles be walking into a diplomatic minefield? I'm Matt Wilkinson, Royal Editor of The Sun, and joining me to unpack it all are Royal biographer Robert Jobson and news commentator Samara Gill. Welcome to you both. Look, to kick off, I want to make some kind of apology, some kind of epiphany that I've had this week. Because in recent shows, in recent weeks, I've been suggesting, or under the misconception, that Harry and Meghan's trip down under is a faux royal trip. That it's somehow crafted to persuade the UK and persuade the royal family and show them, look what you were missing, we can actually go and succeed. But it's not. This is purely a money-making exercise, is it not? They're charging money for all these events. Meghan has now tied up with an AI company in which she is marketing her clothes. I mean, I apologise for thinking it was a faux royal trip. It's not. It's a business trip.
Would you agree with that, Robert? I mean, it's pretty craven, isn't it? I mean, when you think about the function of the royal family, it's to basically go on these trips to try and strengthen diplomatic ties and be a good look for Britain and bolster those relations. But what Harry and Meghan are doing on this pseudo-royal tour is bolstering their own relations and lining their pockets with cash. I mean, this is a trash for cash tour. See it no other way. And it's so craven going to the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne, my hometown, going and posing for photos with children with cancer, going to homeless shelters with your $25,000 watches on and giving out frittatas to homeless women, all to bolster your own public image when we know that Meghan has registered as ever in Australia. She wants to sell those pots of jam over there. There is no massive diplomatic arc to this. It's all for them.
Absolutely. I mean, as you're saying there, we have, a classic kind of royal tour settings, haven't we, where they're going to a hospital, they're meeting children, they're going to a veteran centre and get involved with pottery. But there's side hustles going on. She's marketing as ever. She wants to launch as ever at some stage into Australia. And we just learned that she's also made an appearance on MasterChef, which obviously is going to tie into, her previous Netflix show and all the cookery that she does on As Ever.
The reality is the Queen said you can't do both jobs, the late Queen, and you can't monetise the royal family. And you can't. And that's why they were out. Now, they said they were leaving because they wanted privacy. They don't want privacy. The reality is they're clashing now in a country which is, the debate is still open, very much so, on whether the future of the monarchy. And the monarchy is a constitutional monarchy, parliamentary democracy. This matters because it really does matter, because the king is the king of Australia, and his brother, who's fallen out with, is the heir to the throne of Australia, as it stands. And it's probably around about 45-55, it's more 50-50. And I was on a show on the BBC this morning, which showed the nonsense that the BBC come out with when they said, our listeners say that it's not costing the taxpayer any money. I said, well, it is costing the taxpayer money. Well, it's not costing the British taxpayer. I said, well, the Australian taxpayer is paying and he's the King of Australia. So it's having an impact upon the taxpayer in a sovereign nation, in a nation which is a Commonwealth realm and one of the most important. And the point of it is they don't get it. And if you're telling me that the PR team on a private visit, I think there's 17 people,
yes.
Well, they were met at the airport with the police, because the New South Wales Premier, he's not going to allow anything to happen on his watch. He's going to bring in all the
And
cops.
they knew that.
They knew that, and it's such a load of old nonsense. And as for the stuff about a royal tour, it's not a royal tour, no. Look, They were organising a rota for the press. I mean, they've got embargoes. They're trying to embargo the Australian press. 2 American grifters embargoing the Australian press in their country. Who do they think they are?
Exactly, and this is trashing, as you said, what the late Queen did
Well,
not.
she saw it, Samara. She saw it. What was going to happen? And both her and Charles said, "No, you can't do it."
Is this not what they're doing, though? That they are having their half in, half out.
Of course they are.
In Australia.
Yes, and really this is the problem. And I think what Samara hit on the head there, the problem we've got is that this is impacting on the King. The King is not very well. And by the way, at a time when they've just announced he's going to Washington on one of the most difficult soft power diplomacy missions he's going to do probably in his reign. And who's on the front page of the Times? Harry and Meghan.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And, you know, this was a long time coming for Harry and Meghan, this trip, in some way. Obviously, we look back on their Australia tour. Many see it as a raving success. We know that in your own book, Robert, you said that Meghan said to one of her aides, "Can you imagine if we were making money off this?" or something along the lines of that. Sorry to misquote to you.
No, but I was there. I remember it.
Yeah.
And I went there out there when Harry went there on the pre-Invictus run. And there was genuine interest in him because he was a prince of the realm. He was a Prince of Australia. That's what he is at the moment. He's a Prince of Australia, but he's not anymore because he's a non-working prince.
But the quote there, the quote there is Meghan said when she was in Australia, "I can't believe we're not getting paid." For this." She was representing UK. She was representing the Queen, the royal family in Australia, and she said, "I can't believe we're not getting paid for this." The thing is, she is getting paid for this now because she's joined forces with an AI-powered fashion discovery platform, One-Off. Her wardrobe looks from Australia tour are already online. She's appeared on MasterChef. They're charging money for speaking arrangements. So apparently some of them...
Lots of money.
They're a lot of money, but apparently they haven't actually sold out, I'm led to believe.
But Harry's just talking about his stuff he's already talked about. It's really tough being a father. Yeah, ask our dads. It's tough. It's tough. You're trying to earn a living and put a roof over your kid's head. That's the point.
He's also talking about how to feel psychologically safe in a workplace, which anyone who's worked for Archwell might have comments about that. So I'm not quite sure. But maybe that's why those events haven't sold out, because we don't really see a lot of legitimacy when we see them trying to push these different products to us. But, Harry wrote in Spare that the Australia trip last time around was a big issue and almost was sort of the beginning of the end for Harry and Meghan in their royal life, because, as he says in Spare, the other members of the royal family didn't like the success of that, and they started to get their feathers a bit ruffled about how well Meghan was doing in these royal situations.
I don't think I think that's just in his head. Because when they all go to Australia, when Charles and Diana went to Australia, when everyone's going, "Oh, it's bigger than the Queen," it probably wasn't. I mean, half the whole country saw the Queen in '53. She was there for weeks. I mean, William and Kate, everyone thinks it's bigger than everything. Victoria was in the Telegraph, right? It's the best thing's ever seen. But she's never seen anything like that in Australia because she's never done it before. So
the problem is, when we've got Bronte's out there at the moment. She appears on Royal Exclusive quite a bit.
Yeah, but Bronte know the score.
Yeah, exactly. Just to set the record straight, people think that they are being paid to go and that they've been invited. That's not the case. It's just journalists do go out and report on live events. That's what we do. You trust David Attenborough when he's talking about wildlife in Kenya because he's seen the wildebeest on the Serengeti, and that's what journalists should go and do. So you do get stuck in that bubble.
Well, that's
and
true.
Maybe get wrapped up.
You've sent from the Sun have sent. The Sun, Sun Exclusive has got Bronte there, so it's fine.
Yeah, but we're talking about whether this is a royal tour or not. And what Harry's been speaking about while he's been in Australia. He has mentioned his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. He referenced the time when he was sent out there to, I think it was to inspect the Australian fleet, and he said, "Oh, I had a conversation with my grandmother, and she said, you need to go to Australia and do this." So he has referenced her, and also the hospital, Samara, that you mentioned there in your hometown. Do you say Melbourne?
Yes.
This hospital. The late Queen opened this hospital. Charles and Diana both visited this hospital in the 80s. They are not hiding the fact that they are royal. They are not hiding the fact that they are the related to Charles and Diana. And is this going to trouble the King, Rob?
Well, I mean, all I would say on that is that it'll trouble the King if he mentions something that upsets the Australian Monarchist League, because my understanding, it's not just the people say we don't want them, but at a 50,000 petition. It's the Australian Monarchist League said that if they do anything that they feel is undermining the monarchy's position in Australia, the chairman of the Anti-Monarchist League will write to the King to say, get rid of their titles.
Right.
So it's on both sides. And you've got to remember, the Australian people, they don't have to sort of pussyfoot around with what they say, because ultimately the King is the King of Australia. And if these two do things that they don't like, and they're going to write directly to the boss.
The fact that they're doing this tour, I was chatting to one of my colleagues, one of my friends earlier, you can only do that if you are Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, if you are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. You can't do that if you're Khloe Kardashian. You can't do that if you're David Beckham. You can't hold all these things. The only reason they're actually doing all this is because they are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
Yeah, and Diana did it a little bit after she split up with Charles, and then we had those sort of tours where it was like we went to, I can't remember, Angola, then we went somewhere else.
Was Diana trying to sell her jams out of a car boot after walking across the landmines?
She got quite a good payout, really.
Okay, well, yeah, okay, fair enough. But it's still,
No, she was doing it for the good of the people. She wouldn't take any money. No, Diana's class.
Exactly.
But she couldn't go on for much longer because of the conflict. It's a sort of toxic conflict, really. You can't have it because you can't be both in and out. And they don't really get it, even now. I mean, if they were so worried about the adoration they're getting, why did they give it up? I mean, they had a perfect platform. Maybe there wasn't enough money in it.
Well, if you remember on the show that probably none of us, I didn't bother watching, to be quite frank, Meghan's With Love, Meghan, which I really struggled to get through, but there was a section, I think, on the first series in which she was talking to Mindy Kaling and she said, you know that I'm Sussex now. Mm-hmm. But when she was asked in Australia how to be referred, she said, call me Meg. What's going on there?
Yeah, well, Meghan Sussex hasn't really caught on, has it? I mean, still no one refers to her as that. That's like when, someone tries to have a nickname and no one wants to go with it. I think call me Meg, I mean, she said that didn't she say it to a homeless woman?
You said it, I think, at the veteran shelter.
Yeah, the veteran shelter. So, I mean, obviously she's trying to be woman of the people and all that, but I just know that she's allegedly sanitising her hands after all these events and things like that. I think it's just her trying to be the girl next door. It's just another marketing ploy. I wouldn't look even any deeper into that. I mean, what do you think?
I remember that when years ago, that Prince Edward tried to be the Edward of the people, right? And he said he was doing his TV show. It was called Just Call Me Edward Windsor, because I was a direct. And then everyone was at this press conference, so going to Prince, Your Royal Highness, Your Royal Highness. And I put my hand up and said, Mr. Windsor, and he was absolutely furious. So they like it one way, but they don't like it. Meg, if I went up to her and said Meg, or I said, hey, H, how, Hazza, I think you might get a dirty look. Yeah.
You want the titles or not, basically?
Well, they want it when it suits them, yeah. And they've got it when they suit because the King hasn't taken it away.
Yeah.
Of course they will. I mean, they're using in every single, because I've had a look at all the invites for the Harry seminar and the Meg's weekend with champagne.
Well-being.
Exactly. They all refer to themselves via their titles, which is just directly shows how much they're using them in order to get clout.
Do they have any HRHs on it, though?
Not that I saw.
Oh, that's good. That's it. See, the thing is, they messed up with the deal, didn't they? The Queen, late Queen and Charles, didn't nail it down properly. They should have said, if you're a non-working role, you don't get the title. That's it.
Are they rewriting those Megxit terms on this Australia trip, though? Because they are
literally doing
half in, half out, earning money by parading as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
Well, they've completely cocked a snook at the last deal with the late Queen, and they're just probably flexing themselves with the King. We don't know what conversations were had in that room with the King and Harry when he came over last time, when they were, you're exclusive, you broke it about them swapping the pictures and stuff. We don't know what was said, but I doubt the King would have said, you can do what you like, Harry.
Well, I think the plates are smashing at Buckingham Palace over this, genuinely, because I actually think that, when you look at royal tours, they are so, and you would know this, Matt, having been on many, they are so immaculately planned. Everything is thought about, not just about the event, but how the event will then be read, what they will then say, what effect that will have. This is a clumsy, thrown together, pseudo-royal tour, and the palace has no control over it. But unfortunately, if something goes wrong, the palace, as you say, Robert, will then be collateral. And that's a massive issue. Yeah. And it seems like this isn't the first. This is this isn't the last. This is the first of many different tours that they'll do in this sort of gig economy royal status that they're trying to fashion out for themselves.
I think you're right, yeah.
We'll talk about the King's upcoming state visit in a minute, but that really underlines the fact that, royal tours have a meaning behind them because they are for UK PLC. They are to promote certain British, or to celebrate British links or military or cultural or economic links. This isn't. This is just to celebrate Harry and Meghan or Meg and the Sussexes of Australia. Now, they've been called grifters in the past, and I think before they even touched land on a commercial jet, let's be fair, on a Qantas commercial jet to Melbourne, they were accused in Australia of using Australia like an ATM. After all that we've discussed today, are they?
I don't know about using it like an ATM. I think they've done a little bit of giving back with the charity stuff. I mean, those little girls said it was the best day of their life. You can't be too cynical when it comes to kids, but I would say that they've got plenty of cash in the back pocket, but they are using it as an ATM, yeah.
And they've also, you spoke about the embargo that was broken. They were trying to put an embargo on some of the details, and I think the US.
How can they do that?
But they are saying that because of the embargo, there are no, as you call it in Australia, walkabouts when the members of the royal family go out and speak to members of the public and meet them. They're not having any walkabouts because they claim that the embargo was lifted as a security issue. Do you believe them, or are they worried about not having?
They would have got a good crowd. I mean, Australians turn out for an opening of an envelope, so don't they? Because they cram them in. I remember that. But I think that they would have got a good crowd. I just think my feeling on it is it could have been a bit of a security issue, but the thing is, that would then really if they did a lot of walkabouts, then there would have had to been a lot of police there, and then there'd have been a lot of uniformed Australian police.
I'll tell you why they're not doing walkabouts, because there are a lot of people who hate and despise them in Australia. And those people would probably show up to one of these walkabout locations and try to boo, try to jeer. I'm obviously just alleging all this, but I think that there isn't just this sort of total love for Harry and Meghan over there. We have very much the same view that the UK has, because we are sisters in that way, or cousins, or however you want to put it.
The landscapes are very similar.
Very similar. So there is that cynicism there, and I think that that's also part of the reason. I mean, just look at the checks for the Meghan weekend that they had to do security-wise to ensure that only devotees could be in attendance to share bubbles with her, and no one even vaguely critical or a journalist could be involved. That's how you can see how pressurised they are to get this right and not have any of those moments.
They must be also aware of a public order issues, because if the crowds turn up, so they have to then put more state-funded police officers on.
More taxpayer burden.
I was saying on the BBC, they're going, well, it's not costing our taxpayer anything, but it's costing the Australian taxpayer.
Who, by the way, we're going through a very similar
and he's
period
the King of Australia.
Yeah. There's a similar period of austerity with the fuel crisis, etc. I mean, there's a royal show, I don't want to get into it too much, but we're having a cost of living crisis over there, and whatever bill comes out of how much this is going to cost the Australian taxpayer, it's not going to look good.
And I'll tell you why we should care.
I'll tell you
why we should care in the UK and other countries is that, on the taxpayer issue, is that they do see this as a blueprint. If it can work in Australia, where the landscape's similar, where you have, the king as head of state, Republicans, and they have, real ardent royal fans. If it can work there, they would like to do it in the UK if they get their security.
They would like to do it in the UK. But, I see this as a real sort of, having a go at his brother as well. His brother is going to be, his brother's going to be the one who will be kicked out as king. If he doesn't make it as king, it's going to be on his watch. It's not going to happen during Charles's time. And so he's just sort of saying, can I do this? I'm going to They love me. Look at all these things going on.
Regardless, if you're on the Sussex side or if you're on the Windsor side or whichever side you're on, this is a big middle finger to the royal family.
It is. And there are a lot of monarchists in Australia, aren't there? There are a lot of people. There's a lot of people that don't like. I mean, I do a lot of work with Channel 7 Australia, so I do see, the Sunrise show, and the media there have been pretty vicious, particularly the TV media. The newspapers, like the Daily Telegraph or whatever over there, not our Daily Telegraph, theirs is a tabloid. They don't care because they're quite happy. Nothing really happens that much, so they're quite happy, geeing up a lot of news story, getting a load of things going on, and getting more clicks and sell more papers.
Well, we're going to be keeping an eye, and hopefully Bronte comes back next week and tell us the inside story of what happens.
She might not come back.
She might not come back.
It's nice and sunny over there.
True.
Before the trip took place, we'll move on slightly, but still stick on the same theme, because before the trip took place, there was a quote from a Sussex source who said that the Australia trip will be a welcome distraction from the nonsense going on in the UK. The nonsense going on in the UK that they were referring to was Sentebale suing Harry. We seem to have maybe forgotten about that. That's come and gone so quickly because Australia is happening. But this is sensational. This is a charity that he founded with Prince Say-So, and it was so important to him for so many years. This is bitter. This is acrimonious. This is kind of humiliating for Harry now.
Robert, yes, no, I feel like you're the expert on this.
No, I think it is humiliating. I think, for a lad who's actually spent his time suing every newspaper group he can think of, he's now getting sued himself by charity organisations that, his people appointed and that he set up. What will be even more embarrassing is what comes out, because if there are comments which are inappropriate, shall we say, in this modern world, which I dare say there must be some reason behind the suing. It's going to be embarrassing for him, yeah.
Well, it's spoonful of your own medicine, isn't it? Because it's libel, and Harry's very familiar with all that. Won't go further, but I think it is really interesting, and we don't know that much for now. I've been trying to wrap my head around this. I think we'll get more information. We obviously know Dr. Sophie Chandorka was involved. If it comes out that there has been some sort of bullying or harassment towards this strong black woman executive that used to work at Meta and was a lawyer and very high up and has been dragged down by Harry and Meghan, that could be terrible reputationally. Absolutely terrible for them if that comes out within this case.
We've seen Meghan fall out with people, haven't we? We've seen Meghan's often get the blame for falling out with the royal family, with Netflix, which we'll get onto in a minute about Netflix, and obviously Spotify, etc. We often kind of put the blame on Meghan, but this is Harry, and this is Harry that is being sued by Sentebale, not Meghan. Why do they both appear to just rub people up the wrong way?
Well, sorry, but can we forget this? And you can see it online a lot, but during the polo match, whereby Sophie Chandorka was there, Meghan was there, and Harry was there on the stage, there is a video that has now gone viral of Meghan basically getting Sophie Chandorka out of the way, holding the cup and being central for the photo. So you can see that it's like people get really upset and tired of this constant power PR grab from the couple. But you've probably got much more insight into this, Robert.
No,
why do they do it?
That sums it up. I think that didn't help the situation. This is a very intelligent, sharp woman they've got taken on. And I think that he just thought he could just... I don't know, we'll have to wait and see what comes out in the case, but she wouldn't be doing this unless she thought she was going to win.
I think we've heard from Meghan that she surrounds herself by people who are yes people and don't want to say no, and I think that's also half the issue, is that she's kind of revolving in her own echo chamber, and it creates quite an insufferable person when you don't want to listen to any criticism. But I hate listening to criticism, so,
The Sentebales say they began legal proceedings after, and in quotes, a coordinated adverse media campaign that has caused operational disruption and reputational harm to the charity. The Sussexes say it's extraordinary that charitable funds are now being used to pursue legal action against the very people who built and supported the organisation for 2 decades, rather than being directed to the communities the charity was created to serve. And then a source has said, close to Harry and Meghan, the irony that Sentebale should release a proactive media statement stating there is a coordinated adverse media campaign against the charity, I don't think is lost on anyone. It's bitter. It ain't going away.
I mean, they're always complaining about when someone criticises them, but if it doesn't, they're not prepared to accept any criticism really, and if they do, they want to appoint their own press people and only invite certain journalists, and then their own people that were working for them are taking them on. It beggars belief, really. I mean, it beggars belief.
Is Australia, going to the original point, is Australia now serving as a distraction to Harry's legal crisis with Sentebale?
What, the trip there? Well, it certainly made everyone stop talking about it, apart from Sun Exclusive.
Apart from us. But as I say, we need to find out more. We need to see the court documents.
When that court case happens,
yeah,
that's going to be explosive.
It's going to be explosive. We've discussed on this show many times about Netflix. Meghan's shows on Netflix, which, again, I keep pointing out, I really struggled to get through. I don't think it worked. The 6-part documentary, that was explosive, to use your phrase. But when they split, or when With Love Meghan ended, and then As Ever split from Netflix, it was Meghan who said that I wanted to grow and I was being held back by Netflix. Then we heard these stories from inside Netflix that came out in the US press saying, no, they're a complete and utter nightmare to work for. However, oh, sorry, did you want to say something?
No, I was like, yes, that is exactly the quotes that I've read.
They didn't quote that, but that's my interpretation of what was said.
Some executive quotes, though.
But now we're talking about distraction, about Australia. Just a couple of days before they flew, we've seen Meghan with Netflix boss Ted Sarandos and his wife Nicole Avant. Why?
I don't really know.
Well, they were having like a Netflix kind of throwdown, weren't they? There were a lot of like the key Netflix stars there. It seems like Harry and Meghan pushed their way into that party or got an invite, however you want to say.
Do you believe they're friends? Do you believe they're still, pals?
So if I unfollowed you on Instagram a week ago, would you still think like we were totally fine and we had no issues?
No.
I would never speak to you again, Samara. You'd never appear on this show
Have you
again.
unfollowed him?
Well, so that's exactly what Ted Sarandos did to Meghan the week before those pictures were taken and the party was held. He unfollowed her on Instagram. And for those who don't speak Gen Z millennial, that's a pretty forward thing to do. That's relationship over. Don't want anything to do with you. Kaput. So when you see these photos come out of of Meghan grabbing on to Ted Sarandos' wife, it's like she's grabbing on to the last life raft to get her out of her situation.
Was she getting cold feet, maybe, from ending her
I think
deal
it's
with
different in a social position, isn't it? I mean, I probably didn't want to create a scene, but it doesn't mean they get on, does it, really? I would have thought that they would just go, hello, how are you? And then turn their back and it's those grifters again.
Yeah. Maybe some future Netflix shows, guys. What do you reckon?
Well, why not? I mean, you never know. But Netflix, they're in the game to make money, aren't they?
Well, those photos were splashed all over Twitter, the papers, etc. But then it comes out that actually Netflix requested to have those pictures removed from Getty Images. Why is that? Why? So many questions here.
We've been here before with Kim Kardashian and...
it's exactly the same thing.
This is a showbiz trip, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest. They're making money. They could call it a business trip. It's not a private visit. It's turned into a circus, and everything Meghan and Harry do turns into a circus. They know it's part of the brand. It's part of the way they generate their cash.
Why would Netflix request that? They had a professional photographer there. Why do they want those pictures specifically removed?
Well, let's keep an eye on that one as well. Rob, we're off to America soon. Finally, all been announced, and we had a briefing this week where we were giving some of the details about what's happening.
Oh, wow.
We've discussed in the past about the unpredictability of Donald Trump and the Oval Office. Toe-curling, embarrassing situations where he sat there with Zelensky, the Japanese Prime Minister, MBS from Saudi Arabia, Mertz, when he comes out with some quite outrageous comments.
Well, and J.D. Vance sitting there.
And J.D. Vance sitting there, and the spray, they call it.
Pearlers there, aren't they?
King Charles is going to avoid that.
Very wise.
They are going to limit the amount of times that any journalists, whether we're writing or whether we're filming, any interaction between the King and Trump. That must be a relief for King Charles.
Well, I think King Charles would have handled it fine, but the reality is he doesn't need it. He doesn't need Trump blurting something out that puts him in a position. If they're behind closed doors, they can say what they like freely. And the Prince, as the now King, that's exactly what he will do. He'll say what he wants freely. And if Trump listens, he listens. If he don't, he don't. That's the way it works, or power diplomacy. You're in the room with that person. You try to put over some of your points of view. That's it.
Because the Queen was expert at this, where she would meet people people from both sides of the spectrum, and they would both kind of walk away thinking that the Queen agrees with them and backs up their argument. I mean, is that what Charles will have to do?
I don't think Charles is on the same, does things the same way as the Queen. No, I think that Charles will be sitting there talking particularly about the environment. I mean, this is having a devastating effect upon the economies, the environment, everything. And so he would be quite happy to discuss what's going on and put his point of view. I mean, after all, he's now reader number one. He reads all the security service stuff. He reads all the military reports to the King. He knows exactly what is going on in the overall picture. And I'm sure he'll tell the president in no uncertain terms that, he's got to make sure that the planet is in good health.
It's not just that, though. You wrote an excellent chapter in one of your many books, which I've referred to recently, where you were talking about if possibly Charles was the monarch when we went to war with George Bush and against Iraq, that Charles may have said more to Tony Blair than the late Queen actually did.
He used to call... Yeah, I absolutely believe that. And I don't think it would necessarily change Blair's opinion. But I do believe the Prince would not have given him, as the Prince, as now the King. I think he would have certainly left him in no uncertain terms that the views which were being expressed by the Gulf leaders and the other Arab states, because he's incredibly well respected there. And I think he can have an interaction with those leaders in a way that other political figures can't. And he did. And, he's deeply well respected in that part of the world. And those people... even when we went to Dubai, do you remember you went on? You were the sole person on the rota, even though I was in Dubai myself. And he was doing behind the scenes summits, mini summits, and soft power diplomacy all the time ahead of the Gaza situation. So look, he knows his job, and he's very talented at it.
He's very good on the world scene. I think he's been doing it for decades, as when he was Prince of Wales. But returning to the same point, Donald Trump, he put stuff on Truth Social. He says all sorts of stuff. He recently said that he thought that the King would back him on Iran. Could you imagine that conversation coming up? It's going to be in private. We're not going to be allowed to hear what's being said.
Well, Trump's gone tonto, hasn't he? I mean, we can see that much is true, even though, I'm quite a fan of the TV president. He's unpredictable at the moment, much more so than usual.
Well, the Jesus Christ thing.
Well, exactly. He's been comparing himself to Jesus Christ. He's been saying praise be to Allah on Easter Day. I mean, this is on Easter Sunday. I mean, this is a whole new level of Trumpism, and him constantly searching for viral moments in order to distract from the situation in Iran. And I think that the King's people are very smart, and they know that the King might even potentially be used as a sort of prop for another viral moment to then distract from other news that's coming in, whether it be Epstein files, whether it be what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. So I think that it's a very smart move for them to say, okay, Trump's not going to have the upper hand here. He's not going to say something that's going to create a massive thing on Twitter, and we're just going to leave it at that.
As soon as he leaves, the King is on the flight to Bermuda, I'm sure that Trump will say something.
Yeah. He'll say, the King said this to me in private.
The King told me that Starmer's a fool. Bang.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hanging around afterwards. I'm not going to Bermuda because I'm expecting that kind of thing. Trump will then come out and talk.
Yeah.
Inevitably, that's going to be the story. The story, with the greatest respect, is not going to be the King in Bermuda, which will be fantastic photographs. Fantastic. The story will be the fallout of what Trump says after the King leaves. And if he doesn't say anything, I'll be surprised. Yeah.
Now, we were told during this briefing, Samara, that the aim of this trip is to kind of cement, to kind of renew and reaffirm the UK-US relationship, which it's at an all-time low, but also to celebrate or to mark the 250th anniversary of the United States. It feels a bit odd. They left the UK, they fought a war of independence to leave the UK, and now they're invited our King over to help them mark this very special occasion.
We have to remember, they're going about, they did it with, they're going about the independence. Oh yeah, it's great that we're sitting there. They were at war with us. Not only that, we did actually go back and burn the White House down. I don't know. We've not always been the best of allies. You know.
Well, Charles will speak about the challenges that both countries face in his Congress speech.
I really am looking forward to that speech.
The Congress speech is going to be the highlight.
It's going to be the highlight, but I think the speech at the White House, I think that's going to be just as interesting. But I think that he's going to have to dance a little bit. Both of them will, in terms of around the subject. But we'll see. Maybe they just go straight 2-footed in. Who knows? But the reality is, people go on about the special relationship. It did take America 2 years to come into the war, and it took the bombing of Pearl Harbor for that to happen. So they're talking about we didn't go into the war over the Straits of Hamas. Well, we didn't. We also Harold Wilson didn't join the war in Vietnam. So it hasn't always been as close as people think.
Maybe you need to have a bilat with Trump.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe the king will give Trump a bit of a history lesson or something.
I'll leave him to be the son of God. I can't get involved with Mr. Trump. He's a good man. We've got to get in the country. They check the social media.
We've got to do this. We've got to do this for the United Kingdom. I think it's really important.
The king will stand up for the United Kingdom. Of course he will. But he's a very, very skilled diplomat. But at the end of the day, we have a special relationship which is very important. It's not just about military. It's not just about diplomacy. It's not just about our intelligence services, which are incredibly important. It's about money. And that's what Trump knows, that doing business with Britain puts greenbacks and it helps his economy. So ultimately, this trip is about money.
And the king knows that we need to maintain the special relationships, incredibly important for our economy.
And he'll do the best he can.
He'll be on safer ground later in the trip. We'll be going to New York. He will be marking, I think it's the 25th anniversary already of 9/11.
Don't you think? Yeah.
So he'll be meeting, survivors, families, first responders. Yeah. He'll be going to Harlem. We'll be going to like an urban regeneration farm. And I was thinking it's probably really good for Americans to see working members of the royal family who aren't Harry and Meghan actually doing engagements in the United States. What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, I'm a great fan of His Majesty and the Queen. I do think that they may not be as glitzy and as glamorous as Meghan and Harry, but as I was trying to get over on the BBC this morning, that they don't seem to get it. They're not showbiz. It's not all about showbiz. We're part of a constitutional monarchy, a parliamentary democracy. This is part of our system. And that's the same as in Australia. It's a parliamentary democracy, it's a constitutional monarchy. And so they're not just there to do walkabouts and pat children on the head. They're there to do the graft and to show things that really matter, to highlight things that matter. And that's what he's going to be doing in New York. But he's also showing great respect to the fallen and to those great first responders and those that died. And that sort of thing, it's very important when people see that in both countries, and that it just shows respect.
Yeah, I mean, we're so polarised at the moment. I think the king can rise up and be a big unifier for both Britain and for America. And I think we're in the age where, in a way, I push back because I think they are the ultimate celebrities in some sort of way, but in an American context. But we're sort of in this period where we don't actually have these old school movie stars or anything like that. I just think that you're right. They'll basically use their incredible power and influence in order to shine a light on some really important topics. But I think there will be...
What we forget, though, is that we all think that all this big state visit happening, right? All this, but it's just like a conveyor belt.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, this week we've had the King and Queen of the Netherlands, and she's very glamorous, the dancing queen, they call her. And they're just doing the same things that our King and Queen were doing. And he's sitting there smiling, Trump, and doing.
Yeah.
It's a conveyor belt of diplomatic things, and we just focus on our own ones. Ours probably is the most famous monarch in the world, and probably the most influential, given the Commonwealth realms and the Commonwealth is involved. But we do got to remember this is just part of the game.
But it matters now more than any other because Trump's fallen out with Starmer. I mean, we talk about the cultural ties, the military ties, etc., the 250th anniversary of independence. Is he kind of not just being sent out there to maybe save Keir Starmer's skin, to save the Labour Party that are unable to converse with Donald Trump?
Well, the Prime Minister instructed him to go.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's there in writing. And I think Starmer does know that, I mean, we're in a stage where Trump will listen to nobody, absolutely nobody. But he's got a lot of reverence for the king, and he had a massive amount of respect for the Queen. I mean, there's a great video of him on a private jet just showing this booklet that he especially got made, which is just full of pictures of him and the Queen. Sort of a little bit stalkerish, but if I had so many photos of the Queen, I'd also probably make a book. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. We've got that one bit of leverage over Trump at the moment, and we need to use it.
Okay. Right, we've just got time for our quick-fire questions. Okay, so take a deep breath. With Meghan seen hugging Netflix bosses after their split, what should her comeback series be called?
Can I go first with my one?
Go on.
The Gripping Grifter.
Okay. I think I might watch that. Samara?
Social Mountaineering 101. No, the winner takes it all.
Oh, these are all good ideas.
No, me, no, you.
Oh, very good.
Question number 2. Which New York tourist attraction should the King and Queen add to their itinerary on the state visit?
Well, when they came to Southend, which is my hometown, to make it a city, they posed by the longest pier in the world, and they went on the train all the way down the pier, which was dedicated to our MP who was tragically murdered. I think they should get on the Staten Island ferry with all the tourists and go across to the Statue of Liberty and be posed by the Statue of Liberty to remind President Trump that if you're elected, that is the first thing that all those migrants saw when they came over the Statue of Liberty, and liberty is important for democracy. And I think that would be a great shot.
Well done, Rob. It's a shame they're not going there, actually.
It's a great museum, actually, there on Staten Island. It's really worth going.
Samara, so many attractions in New York. What have you got for me?
Gosh, I mean, first of all, I'd like to see them in Times Square, just like that sort of photo, a picture of them within that with all the different caricatures. And then I'd like them to walk down to the Ed Sullivan Theatre, which is just a couple steps away. God, I'm getting giddy even thinking about it. And I would like them to go and do a guest appearance on Stephen Colbert's show.
I can tell you, if they go to Bermuda, I think they should go to Jobson's Cove, because there's a place called Jobson's Cove in Bermuda.
There's pirates were there, weren't they? It's all
They
about
were
pirates, I think, wasn't it?
actually, they weren't. They were
Yeah, that's
they
what I
weren't
heard.
pirates. There was
Just
a part
say
of
they're
it.
pirates.
They weren't pirates. They weren't. They were. I think they were like,
Sea
pilgrims.
shanties.
So they were pilgrims or something like that. They didn't want to get involved with the British system.
Pirates. Right, and finally...
They could be pirates, yeah.
And finally, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has finally relocated to Marsh Farm, but what new name would best suit his royal retreat?
Well, I'm going to go in then with the Playboy Mansion.
Oh, too soon? We'll be all right.
Plus a cottage.
Okay.
A little Playboy Mansion with a little caravan on the side. Yeah.
Samara?
There are so many that I can't say.
Go on.
Here.
Let's
No,
say
I'll
it.
give the lawyers
Say
an
it.
absolute...
Say it.
No, I think hole in the wall or just something that just seems not... Like Royal Lodge was such bad optics for him to live in, because it's like you're living in the lap of luxury while you... of course, just a lot of stress in general to a lot of people. And yeah, I think it needs to be called like Hove in the Wall, like just something a bit more low key.
Well, I think Marsh Farm kind of works because
Yeah, it
you're
does,
just stuck in a bog, aren't you?
Yeah,
you're just stuck and you can't move.
There's a lot
You're
of
just in a
symbolism
marsh and you can't get out.
We'd
Anyway,
like to
symbolism.
add that Prince Andrew Mountbatten has done nothing. It says he's done nothing wrong.
Well, the last statement we had from him, we haven't heard from him since, is that he denies
He's
all
got
the
stuck in the
allegations.
bog.
Yeah,
Stuck in the marsh.
we haven't heard anything for ages, but he denies all the allegations. But there we go. Thanks, guys. We've been through a lot, and I've enjoyed myself as well. I hope you have.
We're looking forward to Bronte coming back.
We're looking forward to hearing what she has to say. We definitely will.
It'll be really interesting. Yeah.
Right, that's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive. Thanks to my guests Robert and Samara, and thanks to you as always for watching. Remember to subscribe to us here on our Royal Exclusive YouTube channel for all the latest royal news, and we will see you next week.